a week and a half later, and the Farmageddon chaos still isn't done. On last week's episode, we discussed and debunked the various allegations that were made against Iowa State by K-State. First, the social media rumors of racial slurs and objects being thrown. Then, the more prominent, yet equally not credible claim that Iowa State staff was illegally filming the K-State huddle and sending information back to the Iowa State bench, as was reported in the Wichita Eagle, who cited only unnamed sources. Now, Jamie Pollard, our athletic director here at Iowa State, is no stranger to making his point crystal clear. For example, in an unrelated case, he did say on Sikkim 365 radio that the conference was looking forward to Texas being gone. Now, regarding the K-State incident, Pollard reviewed in an interview that there was no evidence of any cheating. During the Kansas basketball game, the student section did not miss their opportunity to troll K-State, as during the first media timeout, the entire student section pulled out their phones and pretended to record the huddle. And for ISU that day, the highlight reel didn't stop when the clock hit zeros, but continued into the press conference room. Today is Friday, February 2nd. I'm Matt Menson. Welcome to the Cornfield Sports Pod, and today, filling in for Blake, we've got producer Vinny on the mic.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
But yeah, before we deep dive back into this K-State stuff, because before the press conference happened, we did actually play a basketball game.
Yeah, we did.
It was a fantastic win against Kansas.
Oh, yeah.
It was great.
Especially against Kansas's, top-rated basketball team. It was actually a pretty good game.
Yeah, at the time they were ranked number 7th. In the current rankings, the AP ranked them 8th, even after we beat them. So they did not slide far. On the other hand, we climbed up a lot. It warranted a jump for us all the way to 12 in the AP poll and 11 in the coaches poll.
Wow.
But there was a lot more to this game. First of all, Bill Self got himself teched up in this game. So this is the second game in a row that an opposing coach got teed up at Hilton Coliseum.
It's always so much fun to watch coaches get teed up because it's just it's so funny to see their reaction to being teed up.
Well, it gets the crowd so hyped too, and that crowd was really, really loud in Hilton Coliseum, and I would have said it's up there among the loudest I've ever heard. Jamie Pollard over Twitter said it was the best. Said, quote, best environment I have ever experienced in Hilton. Now
that tells you pretty much everything you need to know about the game.
That tells you a lot about what the environment was like there. We were camping for 3 days. First group there, which was the group that I was with, was there. We had one guy that set up camp at tip-off of the K-State game. So there was a lot of dedication, a lot of energy, and a lot of passion going into this game. And yeah, Hilton Coliseum was rocking. And the only other game that I can think of that really I can think of 2 games that might compare. First off, 2 years ago, Cyhawk, when even the old timers, the 70-year-olds, season ticket holders, were all standing up and chanting with the student section, F. Bohannon.
Oh, yeah.
That was quite a loud affair. And it takes a lot to get some of the old timers up and chanting like that. But man, I remember they were into it. And then the other one that I can think of would have been last year when we hosted Texas.
Oh, yes.
Because that was not a very welcome return for Tyrese Hunter.
No, definitely was not.
Because nobody around here buys into the sob story that he went back to Texas because of family stuff. Everybody knows that they gave him the bag. So
something that was funny, too, about you all camping out for the Kansas game is that the day before was a gymnastics meet, right?
Right.
Yeah. Everybody's camping out and thinking, oh, they're camping out for gymnastics. No, they're camping out.
Well, nobody was thinking that, but we trolled a little bit with it. 'Cause, I put that on my Twitter.
Yeah. That's what I remember. You put it out there's a gymnastics meet tonight.
Yeah, I put it out on it was 2 o'clock on that Friday afternoon. It was a week ago. Because, it was, or maybe, no, it wasn't quite that time. Because I don't remember if it was before or after we recorded last week.
It was, I think it might have been before.
But yeah, I remember I took a picture of the line from the top of a snow pile and just tweeted, there's a gymnastics meet here today, yeah. But yeah, it was a fantastic game. Kansas played a good game.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
They played it close. The second half, Iowa State is, we started to pull away, feeding into the environment and all of that. But, I mean, it's not like the game was poorly called or anything like that. I don't really have any complaints there. And I'll get to a very similar point again later on with women's basketball. This has actually been a week for good officiating in the Big 12 for once.
For once.
I know, it's crazy. It's that we shouldn't have to talk about that, but it's rare enough that we actually have to talk about it. But anyway, I mean, and Trey King had a heck of a game against Kansas.
Did he ever?
Well, I mean, Kansas was talking about this, and so were the announcers during the game, that Trey King shooting threes in that game, that wasn't on the scouting report.
It wasn't?
No, because
Wow.
Trey King doesn't shoot threes. He's not a good shooter. But for some reason in that game, he was pulling up from distance and he was draining them. So, the other teams were not prepared for that. Other teams are never prepared for that because they generally don't have to be.
No,
but
you really don't.
This one game, he got hot from behind the arc against Kansas, and his threes made up more than made up the margin of victory. So, had he not been shooting hot, Kansas probably wins this game.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, that was a fantastic game for Trey King, fantastic game for Iowa State. And then, of course, we get to the fantastic press conference after the game.
The most fun part of any sporting event is the after game press conferences.
Well, I said in the opening monologue here that the highlight reel didn't stop when the clock hit zeros, because TJ during this press conference, that was a highlight reel of its own. And so before I get to what TJ said, I got the quote pulled up here from when Jamie Pollard did his interview with Seth Davis of The Messenger.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie Pollard said about the K-State allegations, this is a ridiculous allegation that is not fair to our coaches, our student managers, and our players. I'm extremely disappointed that the Kansas State basketball staff allowed this to escalate because it's not right. He also said that he reviewed game footage twice and interviewed staff and fans in the area of the alleged recording activities, and that he was unable to find any evidence supporting the K-State allegations. Now, he did find something else, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to review here quick what Coach Ott said during the post-game press conference. The ludicrous rumors that somehow we're trying to gain an advantage by looking into our opponent's huddles is an affront to our players, our fans, and to me. It's not who I am. It's not what our program is about, and I'm angry that someone would even make that suggestion. He also said, what is factual is one of their staff members cursed out one of our student managers who was mopping the floor under the basket. So let's put this to bed here and now. It didn't happen, it won't happen, and others need to be much more careful with their words moving forward. He's maybe one sentence short of demanding an apology from the Kansas State coaching staff.
No, absolutely.
And they should apologize because they lied.
Yeah, I mean, it's right then and there that they completely lied. So, like, why isn't Jamie Pollard like, we need...
Well, we debunked it last week that they lied, but now we know not only are they lying, they were fanning the flame. They were fanning other flames because they were the instigators of the only problem that actually happened.
Yeah.
They got no reason to be cursing out the guys that's mopping the floor.
Oh, absolutely.
Mopping the sweat off the hardwood. And we had other media guys down there. We had guys from Cyclone Fanatic down there. They did some fantastic reporting on this. But Kansas State had no business making any of the accusations that they did. It's at this point looking like nothing more than a deliberate attempt to tarnish the image of Iowa State.
Yeah.
Because they had no grounds to make the allegations that they did at all. They had no reason to believe the things that they were saying.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they even believe what they were accusing us of.
They were just trying to just go at us for absolutely no reason because they lost. Right.
There's no justifiable reason to think that they even believe what they were saying. And Iowa State, honestly, I think they might I'm no lawyer, but they might have grounds to go after the Wichita Eagle and Sports Illustrated for the articles that they posted because, well, they had false information and they tarnished the image of the university and of the athletic department and of our coaches and players and the other athletic staff that were working that game.
It's the media being the media, just not looking at the actual facts and just going with what people say.
Yeah, they reasonably could be looking at defamation. Will they actually go about and do that? I don't know. I kind of doubt it.
Yeah, I do too.
But, maybe it is something worth actually talking about. Yeah. And the K-State coaches, obviously, we know they had no business slandering us. They had no business harassing our ISU managers either.
Mm-hmm.
The guys are doing their job. They're making the court playable so that you guys aren't slipping and sliding on wet hardwood. You shouldn't be cursing them out. You should be thanking them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all I have to say. What a disappointment coming from Kansas State. And there's been a lot of Twitter action lately where Kansas State was the fun rival before. They're not no more.
No.
There's a lot of fans on Twitter saying that this is they're going to be just as anti-K-State as they are to the team out east.
Yeah.
So,
what started as kind of just a fun little game is now turned into something.
There's going to be a little bit more heat because people are going to remember this.
So good going, Kansas State. You screwed yourself.
Yep. And Jerome Tang, Jerome Tang probably because it's the basketball program. One, get your house in order because whichever one of your staff was saying this stuff to the Wichita Eagle, that's got to get fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So get your house in order, Tang. And don't be letting this kind of stuff happen again. Because, Iowa State, we know how to deal with this stuff. We did a fantastic troll job at the Kansas game,
mm-hmm.
Making light of it because we all knew it wasn't true. We know that nobody's texting any information in the lower level of Hilton Coliseum because you can't get a signal down there.
Yeah.
So they didn't really even think through those allegations. But it was not something that needed to happen. It's something that Kansas State should be taking some remorse for, and so far we've seen no evidence of that.
And to be honest, I don't think that we will. I don't think so.
Well, they've got their already a lot of turmoil as it is with their athletics department down there because of all of the stuff with their university president and getting rid of Naquan Tomlin from the team.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a whole other can of worms that I don't want to get into right now. Our ladies in the last week here, they finished a road stand. They had a loss at West Virginia. They lost that one 84-78. Not a particularly great game.
No.
But they followed it up. They returned to Hilton Coliseum for the first time in 18 days. And they got a win against Oklahoma State. 78-67. That's a season sweep. They beat them at Gallagher-Iba Arena to start the conference season. And for a women's game, this one had a very loud crowd. It wasn't Cyhawk loud where we sell out Hilton for a women's game,
mm-hmm.
but the lower bowl was almost completely full, even on the end caps.
Yeah.
And there was enough people in the upper deck where it was dense enough down low that it got pretty loud.
Oh yeah.
And it definitely made a difference later in the game as our ladies started to pull away. But yeah, with it having been that long since the previous home game, 18 days, the crowd's got to have some stored up energy because a lot of the season ticket holders for women's aren't season ticket holders for men's.
Mm-hmm.
With it being cheaper, it gives a different alternative. But what I want to know from watching that Oklahoma State game, what's going on with some of our conditioning, especially with in the post and the substitutions that's going with it, because I was getting a little bit bothered watching this game, and I remember there was one time I'm watching this game, and Emily Ryan's got the ball up top of the key, calling for Audie Crooks to come and set a screen for her. And that might have been the slowest, most sluggish time I've ever seen anybody come up to set a screen. It was disappointing to watch. And I saw that, and I'm just like, why have we not subbed Audie out of the game and given her a breather here?
Mm-hmm.
Why have we not put Nelly back in the game? Because when you're getting to that kind of a point, and then the same thing was happening repeatedly on defense, where Oklahoma State's 3 or 4 player would come down, drive into the paint, and we wouldn't have any help coming from our 5 slot, even though we're playing a zone defense. And that's textbook stuff. You have to have help coming from there.
Definitely. Seems like Fenley's doing something a little bit different, but
yeah. And then here in this next week, they've only got 1 game. They'll be at UCF. It'll be Iowa State's first trip down to Edition Arena.
Hey, that's a good kind of first game to do it.
So let's go down there and show the Knights how things work here in the Big 12. Get a nice fat win. Speaking of nice fat wins, we should get one for wrestling tonight against 17th ranked West Virginia. This is senior night for us.
That'll be nice. Good senior night.
Yep. And we've only got 4 notable matchups on here. There's 5 ranked matchups, but one of them is at 184 and should be dominated by Will Feldkamp. But anyway, among the notable matchups that we've got here tonight, 9th ranked Anthony Echemendia wrestling 10th ranked Jordan Titus at 141 pounds. This is a coin flip one. Jordan Titus has only 1 loss on the season, but he hasn't wrestled as many tough guys. I think Echemendia is better seasoned.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Jordan Titus is particularly well tested. I like Anthony Echemendia to win this one. I'm fairly confident about that one. Some of these other ones, 149 pounds. We got 10th ranked Casey Swiderski back from a month-and-a-half-long injury leave, wrestling 7th ranked Ty Waters. Coming off the injury, I can't say that I expect Casey to win this one. I'd like it if he did. But wrestling this higher ranked opponent coming off an injury like that, the expectation is not there.
Anything is possible. So, I mean,
No, it's possible. Like, don't ever rule it out.
but just you think because of like him being
Right.
an injury so much, he hasn't really
Right.
like trained enough.
Right. When you're out for a month and a half like that, and you're not getting live competition, you're not getting the full 7 minutes on the mat,
Mm-hmm.
it will slow down. It will slow you down for a little while until you get back into the swing of things. 165 pounds, 2nd ranked David Carr will be wrestling 8th ranked Peyton Hall. I believe they wrestled last year, and 1 or 2 times, and David Carr beat him. So shouldn't have too much to worry about there. David should be able to win that one without too much trouble. He'll just go right back to that classic blast double that he always uses, and man, he's good with that blast double. And then at 174 pounds, we got our final notable matchup, 22nd ranked, 22nd ranked MJ Gaitan will be wrestling 17th ranked Brody Conley. This one is one that I would consider a coin flip.
Oh yeah.
Just because of the way MJ Gaitan wrestles. It's he's a guy, he could pin him in the first period, or he could lose in sudden victory. You never know.
It's really like pretty much all these are just coin flips. You never really know.
Well, Carr and Hall shouldn't be a coin flip.
No.
Carr should win that one without too much trouble.
But I'd even go to say as Swiderski and Waters could possibly be a coin flip.
It could be. It depends on how well Casey's feeling.
Yeah.
Echemendia and Titus. I'm reasonably confident in Echemendia to win this one, even though it's a 9 versus 10. If you see a 1-loss wrestler ranked at number 10, that generally means that he hasn't been wrestling against the best guys. So we'll see what he's actually capable of tonight. Now here's a little fun snippet for you. Iowa State has never lost to West Virginia in Hilton Coliseum. It has not happened.
Knock on wood.
They're 6-0. And considering the other 6 bouts that are not on our notable matchups, we should be winning most, if not all of them. It'll depend on who ends up being our starters tonight and if we sit any of our ranked guys. But I would fully expect that we win this duel pretty handily.
Who knows? Anything is possible.
All right. Vinny, since Blake's out, I think that you've got to handle some high-speed wins.
I will take care of that. So high-speed wins, we've got gymnastics. They got a good win against Illinois State. The next meeting is tonight at Boise State. The biggest thing to look forward to is the sibling rivalry that's going to take place. Hannah Loyam and her twin sister, Emma, are going to go against each other. And I think that's going to be probably one of the biggest things to look forward to.
And then also tennis.
Yeah, tennis. Looking ahead, we got the match versus the team out east on February 16th in Urbandale. The one more win versus the team out east means that it could be a Cyhawk series win for them.
Yeah, so we need to win this one to prevent the team out east from getting that series dub. We have to win we haven't done gymnastics against them yet, I don't think.
No.
We have to beat them in gymnastics. We have to beat them in tennis. We have to beat them in softball.
When that happens, we take it.
Yep. Now, we certainly can beat them in all of those. Whether or not we actually do, I guess we'll find out. I'm going to choose to be optimistic.
As you should.
All right. We got some pro football to talk about. Only a couple more weeks of gridiron action, and it's only one more week because the Pro Bowl doesn't really count.
No, I don't think ever since they moved to flag football, the Pro Bowl has never counted.
No one cares about it anymore because it's not an actual contact game.
No.
They need to. Once they moved it to Orlando, that kind of put the nail in the coffin.
Oh yeah.
When it was at Hawaii and they were playing at Aloha Stadium and it was an actual full contact AFC versus NFC, like an all-star game.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool.
It felt like another week of football, even though it really wasn't.
It was something worth watching.
Yeah. I mean, look at the all-star weekend for baseball.
Right. The all-star game for the MLB is always worth watching.
And same with the NHL.
Same with the NBA.
Yeah, but now it's like flag football. NFL
it's not even the same game.
No, it's like.
And the skills competitions aren't worth watching either. Because. Well, honestly, they try to make it look like a Disney Junior program.
Reminds me of those old
all the bright colors.
Oh yeah, it does feel a lot like Disney.
It doesn't feel like something that belongs in the NFL.
I feel like they're trying to kidify it.
They are. It really does with the Pro Bowl. Anyway, the rest of the season, it's one thing if you have a simulcast on Nickelodeon for your game or whatever.
Yeah.
Which they're going to have for the Super Bowl as well. But again, it's a simulcast. You can watch the game in its regular, perfect CBS broadcast on your local CBS network. So,
you're Russell Wilson getting your butt roasted by Patrick Starr.
Yeah, that can happen. Or you could listen to the CBS announcers fawn over Kansas City as they win yet another Super Bowl because Chiefs Kingdom reigns. And I know I'm going to get some hate for this in Iowa State because everybody's a Brock Purdy fan. I'm torn. This is the matchup I dreaded because I knew I'd have to deal with this. But my loyalty doesn't change. I'm still a Chiefs fan.
Wow. It's interesting. That's a hot take, too.
Yeah, it is a hot take, but my loyalty remains. I'm not going to waver. You got to
stay loyal. That's the biggest thing. If you stay loyal, it's going to work out. So.
My loyalty doesn't waver. Chiefs Kingdom reigns. But yeah, and these teams with the Super Bowl, they are exactly what you would expect in a Super Bowl matchup. You got offensive firepower and defensive playmakers on both sides. They're two very well-matched teams. They're two very similar teams. You look at Kansas City and San Francisco. You compare their offensive firepower. you look at a lot of their pieces are actually pretty similar, with the exception that San Francisco's got a little bit more weapons in the wide receiver core. And that San Francisco's running back is a little bit better than Kansas City's. CMC is a better running back than Isaiah Pacheco. But Pacheco can still do some damage.
Oh, yeah.
But then you look at, fantastic tight ends with Travis Kelce and George Kittle. Fantastic quarterbacks with Patrick Mahomes and Brock Purdy. And fantastic in different ways. Patrick Mahomes, I would say, is a little bit more advantaged as far as just raw physical talent. But when it comes to football IQ, though, Brock Purdy absolutely takes the cake.
I will say, though, Mahomes does have a better rushing.
Yes.
So I feel like that's another.
Don't start saying that Purdy can't run, though.
He can. I will say that, but I feel like Mahomes has more experience with the rushing.
Yes, because the offense is a little bit more built for that. But don't count Purdy out for running, because we've seen him carve up defenses before.
Oh yeah,
college and pro.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And with his football IQ, he knows when to run and when to pass. He knows what holes to look for. So he's got a football IQ, and he's got the physical talent, enough physical talent to be competitive with the football IQ that he has. Because when I think other players in the past that have had really high football IQs, the first guy I think of would be like Tony Romo. He had a really, really good football IQ. He knew exactly what was going on at any point on the gridiron. He just didn't quite have the physical talent to get the Cowboys all the way while he was playing there.
Or the team. He did not have the right team.
Well, it's not that. He didn't have the right team. Like, he didn't always. Well, he had weapons around him, though. Yeah, he did have weapons around him. But he didn't quite have enough talent to make the most effectiveness out of him. But as soon as he started his career with CBS Sports and announcing, and you start listening to his broadcast, you can see this dude really knows his stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like that's going to be the way with Tom Brady, too, when he takes over calling games.
Where's he going? Is he going somewhere?
Oh, I thought he was going to CBC. Hold on. I know.
CBC?
No, CBS, I meant.
CBS.
CBC, what am I, Canadian?
Yeah, I was going to say that's Canadian football is a whole different sport, Vinny.
I'm sorry. Jeez. I know he was going somewhere, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll find that out in a little bit. And then you look at the defensive side of the ball, though, too. Both of them have some fantastic elite playmakers, supported by a good veteran cast. Kansas City side, you got one of the best D-backs in the country with L'Jarius Sneed. And then Chris Jones on that defensive front can best pretty much anybody on an offensive line.
Mm-hmm. I got it right here. Former NFL quarterback Tom Brady will, starting in September, become the number one analyst for Fox.
Okay.
He's nudging Greg Olsen out of the booth.
Okay, that'll be interesting.
I know.
And then continuing along the lines with your defensive playmaker, San Francisco, Nick Bosa and Fred Warner.
They are good ones.
They're amazing. So it's really two elite teams. It's two very complete teams in the Super Bowl this year, and that's the kind of teams that should be making it, are complete teams.
Definitely.
Because and you look at a team like Baltimore this year. They were a great team. They played well. They certainly earned the number one seed in the AFC. But if you look at them in terms of completeness, I think that their defense left something to be desired. And that's why they didn't make it to the Super Bowl.
The team I felt the most bad for was the Lions. Here in the press conference.
That was another team that left something to be desired. Their pass defense was weak, and Brock Purdy carved them up in the second half of that conference championship game.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It sucked seeing Dan Campbell just say, this is probably our only chance.
I don't think it's going to be their only chance. They got a lot of young talent on that team. It's a very team-friendly roster, team-friendly contracts. Jared Goff is still pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are young. Sam Laporte is young.
But losing Teddy Bridgewater, what does that say?
That doesn't make a whole lot of difference because he doesn't play anyway.
Yeah, true.
No, Detroit's got a young, very talented team. They've got because they're young, they got some rookie contracts on there. They've got some cap space to make some moves in the offseason here and try to bolster that even more.
Right.
I would certainly consider Detroit a threat next year. So no, was this their only chance? Absolutely not.
I don't think so either. But big question I need to ask. Because it's the Super Bowl and the Chiefs are in it, will we see Taylor Swift?
In a luxury box or something, CBS is going to.
Well, but here's the thing. She's actually going on tour next week in Japan.
Yeah, and ESPN actually did the math. Like, they made an article of them doing the math to figure out how she could get there.
Did they say it's possible?
Yeah. It was possible by 6 hours. It wasn't really that close.
But do you think that she's going to try to, or do you think she's just going to just stick to being in Tokyo to watch the game?
Oh, no, she'll absolutely. We're talking about one of the most famous people on the planet who will do anything to garner more attention. So being on the cameras at the Super Bowl is probably pretty high on her priority list.
Yeah, you got a point now that I think about it.
So, yeah, I think that will definitely happen. As long as I don't stick her in the halftime show or something like that, that would kind of ruin it. But
definitely would.
Let's abandon that talking point because I don't like talking about that. Let's go to the NBA.
Something better.
Yes, actual ball. The Minnesota Timberwolves, 34-14, first in the Northwest, the number 1 seed in the Western Conference right now.
Dang.
This previous week was a bit of a mixed bag for them. Tough loss at the Spurs, 113-112, and the Spurs are not a good team this year.
Just losing by 1 point.
Losing by 1 point sucks. Yeah. Losing to the Spurs post Tim Duncan era sucks.
Yeah.
Both at the same time, ouch.
Yeah.
But they followed it up strong. Win at the Thunder, 107-101, and then a huge win at the Dallas Mavericks.
Destroying them.
121 to... Here's how strong their defense came in this game. They only allowed the Mavericks to score 87 points. This is a phenomenal...
A difference of 34 points is insane.
Well, that's only allowing a team to score 87 points, regardless of how much you score, is a phenomenal defensive performance.
Mm-hmm.
Holding a team under 100 is good. Holding a team under 90, that's rare.
Yeah.
So an absolutely brilliant defensive clinic from Minnesota against the Mavericks. And it was a good response after that loss to the Spurs. So they're continuing to build up their record, staying first in the Western Conference. They've got their offensive solution with Anthony Edwards. He's a great scorer. Obviously, Karl Anthony Towns can still score after he got the 62 points like a week and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then, they're not really missing a whole lot of pieces as far as, you look at rebounding, you look at assists, things like that. The other metrics that don't show up on the scoreboard itself, they're all there for the Timberwolves. Mm-hmm. This is absolutely a title contender team right now as it is. And as we approach the trade deadline here, I wouldn't expect much action. For one, because they don't really have holes to fill, aside from maybe like a backup point guard.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that hasn't been a problem so far. And they don't have room to increase salary either, so they're not going to add any big names because they would have to get rid of their big names that they already have, and they're not getting rid of Cat. They're not getting rid of Gobert. They're not getting rid of Edwards. So that's just not going to happen. So upcoming for the Timberwolves here in the next week, they will have a homestand against the Magic and the Rockets before they take a nice little Midwestern road trip to Chicago to play the Bulls and to Milwaukee to play the Bucks.
Be a fun little road trip around the Midwest.
So Minnesota gets to play the other two teams we cover. Speaking of them, the Bucks, 32-16, they remain at first in the Central and the second seed in the Eastern Conference. They had a tougher week, and they are not looking great since they fired Adrian Griffin.
No.
They won at the Pelicans to start the week, 141 points to 117. So their offense is still perfectly present. But they followed that up by losing at the Nuggets and then losing to Damian Lillard's former team, the Portland Trail Blazers. And since hiring Doc Rivers as their head coach, the Bucks are now 1-3. Not a great start for the new regime. It doesn't look like we don't have enough games yet to be able to say that there's any major defensive improvements, which was the major point in hiring Doc Rivers. The offense has done mixed. 141 points is fantastic. 113 points less so.
Mm-hmm.
That's slightly below average. And then the Trailblazers game, again, they scored they allowed 113 points. They only scored 107 in that loss against the Nuggets. I misspoke. And they scored 116, which is around average, maybe a little bit above average. And they allowed 119. So their defense is not doing great right now.
No.
So we'll see what they can do with Doc Rivers, if he can give him a couple weeks, if they can make some adjustments. But right now it's not looking great. And with the trade deadline in 6 days, again, don't expect much from Milwaukee either. They don't have salary room to work with, and they don't have much draft assets to work with either.
No, they really don't.
They really don't have any draft picks available to trade. So they're not going to get rid of Dame. They're not going to get rid of Giannis. They're not going to get rid of Lopez. So at this point, there's not really much for Milwaukee to do as far as making trades unless some other action happens outside of Milwaukee first. And for the Bulls, the story with the trade deadline is going to be a little bit different. We'll get to that in just a second after I go over the previous week's games. They won at the Trailblazers, which the Bucks couldn't do.
No.
Go Bulls. 104-96 win for the Bulls at the Trailblazers. They then came home and lost to the Raptors 118-107. For some reason, and this was the only game I was able to tune into for the Bulls in the last week. For some reason, the Bulls are worse when I watch. Like, they just lose in the fourth quarter more often when I watch. And it seems like every time they win, it's when I'm not watching.
So what does that tell you?
Tells me I need to stop watching the Bulls so they can win.
Point. That's the point. So get rid of all Chicago sports broadcasting ways to stop watching the Bulls.
Maybe it's just I need to stop watching NBC Sports Chicago. Maybe they just need to ditch NBC Sports Chicago when the contract expires and build their own network. Maybe it's an NBC thing.
Yeah.
Let's have it be that, because I don't want to stop watching Bulls games.
Well,
it also affects the Blackhawks, which are broadcast on NBC Sports Chicago, and I don't really get around to watching Blackhawks games all that often.
Well, you're lucky.
Yeah. I watch the Ducks, and that ain't any better. It's a
little bit better.
That depends on the year.
Whatever.
Because last year it certainly wasn't. But anyway, trade deadline in 6 days. For the Bulls, there actually might be some action coming out of this. Now, Zach LaVine for Andrew Wiggins, which had been talked about for a while, is a waning possibility. Steve Kerr from Golden State said he's hoping that Andrew Wiggins is still on their roster after the trade deadline. So the chances of getting rid of Zach LaVine now seem to be getting very slim.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is a speculated trade with the Oklahoma City Thunder. I don't know if this one's really going to get any traction or not, but there was some talks that Oklahoma City, in order to bolster their chances at making a deep run in the playoffs, wanted to get some improved rebounding, so that they might have been interested in Andre Drummond.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, they might have been willing to trade Alexej Pokusevsky. That's such a hard name to pronounce.
That's a name.
Yeah. And then some draft picks to go with that, some second rounders. On top of that, Chicago should be looking at possibilities with DeMar DeRozan because his contract does expire after this season. And then the Lonzo Ball injury could be deemed career-ending with him continuing to not be playing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then if that happens, if DeMar and Lonzo Ball are both off the team after this season, and the Bulls are able to trade Zach LaVine away, that could open up almost over $50 million in cap space for next season.
Yeah.
Which that's a lot to work with, to do stuff with. You can bring in a pretty darn good player with $50 million, or a couple decent players, and really do some stuff with that. And then there's been a lot of trade speculation around Alex Caruso. I think it's time that we put this one to rest, because his salary is pretty team friendly. So I can't really see Chicago wanting to trade him, because the associated costs that would come with whatever they get for him would be pretty high.
Yeah.
Right now, Caruso is a cheaper piece that's been doing fantastic. He's one of the best defensive players in the league. He's an all-defensive player. So I really don't see any reason for Chicago to trade him right now.
No, definitely not.
No. And upcoming for Chicago here in the next week, they'll be hosting the Sacramento Kings and the Minnesota Timberwolves before they hit the road and go to the FedEx Forum to play the Memphis Grizzlies. NHL, not a lot of action this week because it's All-Star Week.
Yep. So
everything that's happening this week, for the most part, doesn't count.
Not really.
But there have been a couple games to talk about. I mentioned being a Ducks fan, of course. You know,
Yep.
y'all know me, and my Ducks beat the Minnesota Wild in a game 3-2 a week ago.
Yep.
Troy Terry, 2 goals for Anaheim. Adam Henrique, 2 assists, and Lucas Dostal, 35 saves. Dostal is starting to look like he's going to be John Gibson's replacement for Anaheim.
Definitely.
Gibson's had a long career there.
Yep.
And he probably doesn't have a whole lot left because he's starting to get older. So
yeah, definitely. Then the Wild have just one game this week or next week, and it's against
your Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah.
So it's a free win for the Wild.
Oh, it definitely is. Absolutely. And speaking of the Blackhawks, we'll talk about them. What's new here?
The Calgary Flames got a free win.
Yeah. The Calgary Flames get a free win.
1-0. So the Blackhawks defense showed up. And their offense was nowhere to be found.
No. And I actually have something here that's actually pretty funny. This is from Bleacher Nation. This goes over the statistics of their games with Bedard and without him. They had 39 games with Bedard. They had at least 2 goals per game. Their power play percentage was at 13%. The shots on goal was at 26.3, and the shot percentage was at 8.8. In the 11 games without Bedard, their goals per game is at 1. Their power play percentage is at 10. Shots on goal per game, 26. Shot percentage, 4.8.
Quite the decline.
Yeah. But then the biggest thing, can Bedard really make that much of a difference?
Turns out he is. The thing is, it's just not enough to put wins on the board, because all of those stats you're looking at are offense.
Yeah, but even with Bedard,
the defense isn't there.
Yeah, goals per game 2.31. I mean, even still,
that'll win you some, but not much.
Yeah, it's not going to win anything. The only good thing was our shots on goal per game at 26. That's the only good thing. Everything else.
Well, that's not even a great statistic. You want to get that closer to 30.
Oh, absolutely. It's just it's so crazy. Even with him, we are not that good.
Well, that's because you don't have anybody surrounding him.
And that comes into coaching and trading, and from the general manager.
It's general management at this point.
Yes. And it's being run by a 36-year-old who probably has no experience whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, the general management of the Blackhawks is not my area of expertise, but what I can tell is what I can see, it's right in front of me, is they don't have a good roster.
No.
They don't have good coaching. And the person that's responsible for getting your roster together and for getting your coaching staff together, that's your general manager.
Oh, yeah.
And when all of that is having a problem, that's a general management problem. If you've got a good roster but a bad coach, well, that's a coaching problem. If you've got if you've got great coaching but no talent on your roster, well, that's actually probably a general management problem too.
Even with the general manager issues, Luke Richardson is still not a good coach.
No, he's not.
He has never been a good coach. He has been, in the 2 years that he's been on the Hawks, decline. The biggest decline. The only good thing we got out of it was Bedard, and now he's injured, and we've got nothing.
Yeah, it's quite the disaster for Chicago
In the past 4 games, we've had 3 shutouts.
Yep. No offense at all.
No.
Meanwhile, the St. Louis Blues.
Big win against the Kraken in OT, that's for sure.
They had good offense in 2 games in a row.
And then nothing.
Followed by nothing.
Yeah. But Pavel Buchnevich, the OT win against the Kraken, that put him on the 4-game win streak.
The Blues are up to tied for 4th in the Central now because they were sitting at 6th for a while.
Oh, yeah.
They passed the Coyotes. And then
Which, oh my God, that's surprising. The Coyotes.
They're actually not dead last because they're the Coyotes.
Yeah. Like, it's so funny to think how, like, a few years ago, the Coyotes were the punching bag of the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's the Chicago Blackhawks and the San Jose Sharks.
And the Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah, pretty much.
The Coyotes, they've got their own slate of problems, though, right now with their arena deal. Now, it looks like it's starting to look like maybe they'll have a home in Salt Lake City before too long because Salt Lake City is really pulling for a team.
Wow, to think about the Salt Lake City Coyotes.
Well, they could change their name.
Probably to
but
the Utah Coyotes.
Or something like that. But yeah, it would be interesting, and they'd be a better fit up there than they are in Phoenix anyway, because Phoenix is not it's not a winter sports town.
Well, the only other place that I can think of that is actually looking for a team is Atlanta. They're wanting to get back to the NHL.
They are, but at the same time, they're not really a winter sports team either, and they've already been tried twice and failed twice.
Yeah.
So, insanity is trying the same thing multiple times and expecting different results. So I can't really see the NHL wanting to go back to Atlanta. But Salt Lake City, now that hasn't been tried. It's a winter sports town. It's going to be hosting the Winter Olympics, presumably, before too long. So
it still amazes me that Kansas City is not looking for a hockey team.
It kind of amazes me that they're not really looking for much of anything.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, they are still trying to figure out the deal with the Royals and their new stadium, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Coyotes, that's an interesting case with the Coyotes potentially getting a move to Salt Lake City. And they've been the new ownership group, or not the new ownership group, I should say, but the ownership group of the Utah Jazz, which is what's looking for ownership of an NHL franchise, so they're saying that their arena that they have for the Utah Jazz is NHL ready. Like, they can play NHL hockey games in it. They could set it up in 24 hours. But they are also talking about potentially building a separate hockey-only arena. And to be honest, I'm not sure how bright of an idea that is. I mean,
No.
there's some cities where it's worked. It's worked in New York, where the Islanders have their own arena. They're not playing at the Barclays Center.
Yeah, that's true.
It's worked down in Miami, where the Panthers are not playing at the same arena as the Heat.
Didn't Seattle do something like that too? Or am I just losing my mind?
Well, Seattle's they don't have an NBA team right now. They're the only the Kraken are the only tenants, the only permanent tenants of the Climate Pledge Arena.
So I mean, technically, it is true.
So it can work, but it's just having 2 separate arenas in the same city, and the Twin Cities has pulled it off too, with the Timberwolves playing at the Target Center and the Wild playing at the Xcel Energy Center. So it can work. It's just harder, and the Phoenix Metro was not able to pull it off.
No, definitely not. Because they use the Arizona State.
They're using Mullet Arena, which is Arizona State's right now, which is a little college arena. They were playing up until 2 years ago. 2 years ago was their last season at the Desert Diamond Arena, which is on the west side. What's that, Glendale or Mesa or something like that?
Yeah.
It's right next to State Farm Stadium where the Cardinals play. And then the Footprint Center, which is where the Phoenix Suns plays in downtown Phoenix.
Yeah.
And that's downtown Phoenix is where the Diamondbacks also play. But, you know, we're not really comparing them to football and baseball stadiums right now. So, but yeah. Aside from that, yeah, the Blues got their wins at the Kraken and at the Kings. They passed the Coyotes in the standings, and I can't remember for the life of me who they're tied with right now. And then they lost against the Blue Jackets 1-0 to end their week. So it ended their win streak, but it's been solid right now for the Blues.
They're tied with the Predators.
They're tied with the Preds. That makes sense.
That does make a lot of sense. And you know what the only sad thing is? Going back to Blackhawks, they are now 17 points behind the Wild.
That's it?
Blackhawks have 30. The Wild have 47.
It's only 17 points. You would think with how bad the Blackhawks have been that it would be more. Yeah, and then for the Blues this week, they've got a full week off.
They do. Give them time for the All-Star game.
Well, they've got until our next episode next week. They don't have any games between now and a week from now.
Yeah, that's really
now,
interesting.
Granted, they had a denser schedule leading into the All-Star week.
Oh, yeah.
Than a lot of the other teams did.
Because the Wild had one game, the Hawks had one game, but the Blues had three. So, I mean, that kind of makes sense to give them that time off.
They get a little bit more rest. And then we got some action in the MLB right now in offseason stuff.
I know you've been waiting forever to talk about this, so I'm excited.
Yes, I have. We got a lot of stuff just for Minnesota alone right now. First thing I want to start with, second base, third base, it was a switch player, Jorge Polanco, traded to the Seattle Mariners in return for right-handed pitcher Anthony DeSclafani, right-handed pitcher Justin Topa, minor league outfielder Gabriel Gonzalez, and minor league right-handed pitcher Darren Bowen. So you get a couple of promising guys in the minors to work their way up through the farm system, which the Twins have been doing really well with lately. The Twins farm system is great. I mean, Colonels just won High A. So, and then, you know, DeSclafani, we needed starting pitching. Now, is he anything real special? No, he's probably fourth or fifth in the rotation, but we needed somebody, and now we have somebody.
Yeah.
So he'll probably be behind Bailey Ober for sure in the rotation. We'll see whether or not he's ahead or behind of Chris Paddock.
Mm-hmm.
But this trade was a huge win for Minnesota to get you know, a starting pitcher, to get bullpen depth, to get prospects, and to free up that log jam in the infield that they had, because they had more well than enough talent there. You know, they've already got guys on rookie contracts in Royce Lewis and Eddie Julian. Great talent for dirt cheap. And they're more well than capable of playing those positions. Their defense is more well than good enough, and their offense is fantastic. We all know Royce Lewis is one heck of a long ball hitter from third base. And Eddie Julian has got some of the best plate discipline in Major League Baseball. And then, you know, in the event that one of them gets injured, Kyle Farmer is still available as depth, as a backup. He can also play shortstop for Carlos Correa.
Mm-hmm.
So the Twins are doing more well than all right right now for there. And then Jorge Polanco's heavy contract is no longer a burden. That gives them some space to work with. And when they made this trade, this was before they just signed their new TV contract with Diamond Sports Group. This is a very new development. Just got it in the script hours before recording.
It was like minutes before recording.
It was probably about a half hour before we started recording. But they did sign a new TV contract with Diamond Sports Group. The details of it are still mostly unclear, but one of the main details that did come out, and this one annoyed me, streaming rights were not included with it, which means that when Amazon Prime starts doing the RSN broadcast, it means that the Twins probably won't be a part of that.
Nice going,
because
Diamond
they
Sports
won't
Group. You made Matt Menson mad.
again. So it will still be really hard for me to watch the Twins. But yeah,
There's still radio at least.
Yeah, there'll still be radio, but it won't be available for the exact same reason that it wasn't available over Bally Sports Plus. And there's only 5 MLB teams that have signed streaming rights with Diamond Sports Group. And I trying to remember off the top of my head who they were. I know the Royals and the Brewers were 2 of them. I can't remember. I think the Rays might have been one of them. I cannot remember who the other 2 are. I know the Guardians and the Rangers aren't them because they also signed with Diamond today, and it was not part of their agreement either. I don't think the Braves or the Angels were among that group either.
So it looks like, if I've got this up right, it looks like the Miami Marlins, the Tampa Bay Rays, Detroit Tigers, Milwaukee Brewers, and the Kansas City Royals were the ones that were signed.
That makes sense. That sounds right. The length and dollar amount of the Twins' new TV contract so far is still unknown to the public. With the instability with Diamond right now and them still being in bankruptcy proceedings, it wouldn't shock me if it's only for this season, but we'll find out.
Yeah, definitely.
And then this whole thing is still not set in stone yet. It's all pending a judge's approval because of the Diamond bankruptcy hearings. Now, the Chicago White Sox have had a little bit less action, but they've had some. They signed right-handed pitcher John Brebbia to a 1-year, $5.5 million deal. In 10 starts last year with the San Francisco Giants, he went 3-5. And then they also DFA'd infield outfielder utility player Romy Gonzalez. The Kansas City Royals had some changes on their roster. Utility Samad Taylor was sent to Seattle for a player to be named or cash. That's an unfinished trade. They signed utility player Adam Frazier for a 1-year, $4.5 million deal. They provided a left-handed bat that they needed, and he's coming off of his career best season in Baltimore. You know, he had his most home runs there. He all-starred with the Pirates a couple years ago. So he should be a good improvement for the Kansas City Royals. And there's also the development that Jackson County is now committed to helping the Royals fund a new ballpark. Their county administrator or county executive or whatever it's called originally vetoed after an 8-1 legislature vote for a 3/8 cent sales tax to help fund this. And the county legislature overrode the veto by a 7-2 vote. So someone actually flipped in favor of the veto, but regardless, it was enough to override the veto. Mm-hmm. And Jackson County will be helping the Royals to fund a new ballpark, and some of these funds will also go to helping renovations in Arrowhead Stadium for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
A little more action. The big blockbuster trade of the week for the Milwaukee Brewers, Corbin Burns getting sent to the Baltimore Orioles in return for shortstop Joey Ortiz, who is projected basically to be a replacement for Willy Adames, who's only on contract for this next season, and then after that his contract expires. So the Brewers have a replacement lined up for him. They're also going to be receiving left-handed pitcher D.L. Hall, and then a 2024 34th overall pick. So they'll have someone new to add to the roster this summer. Or, well, they probably won't be adding it to their MLB roster this summer. They'll be adding it to the rookie leagues.
Yeah. But
they'll be getting a new prospect out of it. And then they also signed first baseman / designated hitter Rhys Hoskins. Wow, I'm stumbling over my own tongue. Not Hawkins, Hoskins. It's a 2 years, $34 million deal with an opt-out after 2024. And they didn't offer a contract to Rowdy Tellez to keep him at first base after this year. Tellez had a pretty abysmal year, and so Milwaukee didn't really want him back. They went, to free agency to find another solution, and they got one with Hoskins. Almost certainly will be an improvement at the plate for him. Chicago Cubs signed right-handed pitcher Hector Neris, and this one's pending a physical. 1 year, $9 million contract. After Josh Hader signed with the Astros, Neris was the top remaining reliever in free agency. Now he's not in free agency. The Cubs got the best available option, so they're making some more action. And then right-handed pitcher Matthew Peters, he was a minor league prospect for the Cubs, suspended for the 2024 season because he had a positive PED test. Ouch. So that's going to set him back at least a year, if not significantly more than that because of fallback. You don't play for a year, it will set you back and make you a worse player than you were before.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And then the last stuff we got to cover here, the Cardinals agreed to terms with reliever Kenyon Middleton pending a physical. I didn't see contract details available on this one. This one was relatively new development. We'll see how much time he actually gets on the hill because the Cardinals do still have their closers from last season and they have some bullpen depth. I was a little surprised that they picked him up in the first place. So we'll see what they end up doing with him.
Who knows?
But that sums up our MLB offseason action for the teams that we're covering here. But yeah, follow the Cornfield Sports Pod on Twitter at CSportsPod. You can find me at the Menson Minute.
You can find me at Vinicius D23. Think of Tenacious D and just substitute 10 with Vin and 23.
And of course, tap the follow button on Spotify, the plus button on Apple, subscribe on YouTube and Rumble. For Blake Peterson, I'm Matt Menson.
And I'm Vinny Cataldo.
And this has been the Cornfield Sports Pod.